Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. A major event took place on February 1st in Southeast Asia regarding Burma's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. In the morning of February 1st, Burma's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint, and other party officials were raided and detained by Burmese military. The military is now in charge of the country. Win Myint, a spokesperson for the ruling party, confirmed the news on the morning of the 1st. He called on the military to be calm and to act in accordance with the law. He also stated in public that he might also get detained. Subsequently, the Burmese military declared a state of emergency and will be ruling the country for a year. At the same time, banking services in Burma were shut down extensively due to the turmoil. The military almost cut off Burma's phone connections, and the internet was partially cut off on a large scale. Burma's internet connection rate had been reduced to 44%. A reporter in Burma had his Signal and Telegram accounts logged out automatically. State-run television stations are also controlled by the military. They only broadcast a limited number of programs, which are military announcements. For example, the military announced the termination of 24 government ministers and deputy ministers through state-run television on the evening of February 1st. According to the BBC, some military personnel went directly to the homes of various party leaders and arrested 8 of them. In addition, leaders of minority ethnic parties as well as student leaders were also arrested by the military. Some Burmese journalists have told the public that journalists are now in very dangerous situations. They are cautious about giving interviews for foreign media and are afraid to give their names. The situation is very tense. Now, most Burmese people listen to the military's radio broadcasts through small radio speakers. The military has announced to the Burmese people on the radio that power has been transferred to the Commander-in-Chief of the National Defense Force. Min Aung Hlaing, Mint Sui, the current vice president, is acting as president of Burma. The coup was initiated by Burma's military because the ruling National League for Democracy Party, or the NLD, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, was suspected of voting fraud in Burma's November 2020 election. The military did not recognize the election results. The election was a second landslide victory for Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD, after the previous one in 2015, which meant that the NLD could remain in power for another 5 years. Meanwhile, it was also the second democratic election in Burma since the end of military rule. Specifically, the NLD won 396 seats in the combined lower and upper houses of parliament, while the military proxy party, the Union Solidarity and Development Party, won only 33 seats. Burma's military had already been in conflict with Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD government prior to the coup, and the military considered the election was unfair. On January 28th, they also mentioned the possibility of abolishing the constitution, which was the beginning of a military coup. The coup was staged on February 1st, which was the first day of the new parliament after the elections. After taking over power this time, the military announced that it would hold a truly fair and free election in Burma within a year and then hand over the power to the real winning party. However, Win Myint, the spokesman of the National League of Democracy, NLD, made a differing statement to the outside world after the coup. They said that the military was trying to put the country back under a dictatorship. Therefore, they hoped that the people would not accept the coup and would respond wholeheartedly to protest. In his perspective, in short, the military is trying to take power away from the democratically elected government. Win Myint also said that it was authentic and reflected Suu Kyi's wishes. After releasing this statement, Win Myint also lost contact with the media. At present, the Myanmar's military has sent soldiers to guard the houses of some NLD members who are detained. Burma is the second largest country in Southeast Asia, with a population of 55 million, including at least 3 million ethnic Chinese. It has an area of 700,000 square kilometers. Prior to 2005, Burma's capital was the famous city of Yangon, with a population of 8 million, and was the largest and most prosperous city in Burma, having been established over 150 years ago. After 2005, however, the capital was moved to the inland city of Naypyidaw. After the coup, according to local sources, the military sent armed soldiers to Naypyidaw, the main site of the coup, and military vehicles blocked the roads. A large number of police were stationed in Yangon, the largest city in Burma. The streets of Yangon were mostly deserted during the day on February 1st, with police being pulled into the city by large trucks and armed soldiers outside of Yangon City Hall. However, some supermarkets in Yangon were crowded with people rushing to buy supplies for stocking up. Many supermarkets closed early, probably because telecommunications had been cut off and people had to use cash to buy supplies. However, there have been no more protests in Burma, as called for by Aung San Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi was born in 1945. Her father was a famous general in Burma. He was assassinated in 1947. Aung San Suu Kyi left Burma in 1960 with her mother, who had gone to India as an ambassador and did not return until 1988. She founded the National League for Democracy, the NLD party, in September of that year, which quickly grew into the largest opposition party in Burma. At that time, Burma was still under long-term military control. They placed Suu Kyi under house arrest on July 20th, 1989. One of the goals was to prevent her from running in the 1990 election. Despite this, Suu Kyi's Democratic League party won most of the seats in the parliament. Suu Kyi should have become Burma's prime minister at that time, but then the military government rejected the election and declared the NLD an illegal organization, refused to hand over power, and continued to house Suu Kyi. In 1991, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. She was released in 1995, then placed under house arrest again in September 2000. She regained her freedom on November 13, 2010, just before the military agreed to hand over power under pressure from all sides. In 2015, Suu Kyi led the NLD to victory in the general election, but because her husband and son are both British citizens, she could not become the president. So the ruling NLD created a new position for Suu Kyi, above the president, called State Councillor, which made her the actual leader of Burma. However, after coming to power, Suu Kyi allowed the military to suppress the Rohingya people in Burma. According to statistics, about 10,000 Rohingya people were killed and about 700,000 people led their homeland. This incident severely damaged her reputation. About 2 million Rohingya living in Burma have been denied the right to vote before the 2020 election. According to the results of the general election that had been announced, Suu Kyi and her party still have the support of most people in Burma, except for the Rohingya. But if they did manipulate the election, as the military alleges, that's another story. This incident in Burma involves very complicated Burmese historical and social issues, so we will not take any positions on the military's detention of Suu Kyi for this time being. Whether it is a good thing or a bad thing, we will continue to observe the development of this situation. But we can look at the reaction of the international community. With the exception of the Chinese Communist Party, which said it hoped the country would handle it under a legal framework and urged all sides to properly manage differences, the attitude of Western countries is relatively clear, and most of them oppose the military coup. The United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, the European Union, and all United Nations have all condemned the military coup. Japan also takes this position and calls on the military to release Suu Kyi. According to an analysis by the Human Rights Watch executive, the Burmese military has never left the core of power for decades, and the arrest of Aung San Suu Kyi only reflects the political reality in the country. But the human rights organization's attitude is clearly inclined to oppose the military coup. They expected the US and Europe to impose new sanctions on the Burmese military government and want Japan, South Korea, and other countries to stop investing in Burma. A spokesman for the CCP Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China did not explicitly condemn the coup, saying only that he hoped all sides in Burma can appropriately handle their differences under the constitution and legal framework. In fact, Burma is an important partner country in the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative, and the cooperation agreement signed between the two governments of Suu Kyi and the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative is likely to be affected after the coup, although the military's attitude in this regard is not clear as of yet. The reaction from the Biden administration is likely to attract a lot of attention. Regardless of the nature of the coup, we look at what happened in Burma from the surface, and it looks too much like the 2020 US election. Once again, it's an election issue, and one side thinks the other side has done something dishonorable to the election. There were also rumors among Americans that the US military may support Trump and would cut off the power grid and communication networks as part of a military action. There was also an active pro-Trump activist in the US who urged people to stock up on food and to prepare wireless radios to listen to military broadcasts. All of these things, which the mainstream U.S. media sees as conspiracy theories, are being played out in Burma today. The White House said Biden is shocked at the detention of Suu Kyi by the Burmese military and urges it to respect the wishes of the Burmese people as expressed in democratic elections in November 2020. Biden's Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the military must reverse these actions immediately. The Biden administration's response is not surprising, and perhaps what happened in Burma really scared some of them. How does the CCP perceive America's change of presidency? Instead of strategic patience, the Chinese Communist Party is changing its strategy to take full advantage of the Biden administration's weaknesses and to put them to test. On February 1st, Vision Times published an article comparing the Chinese Communist Party to a two-headed beast. One head is a panda and the other one a wolf. When former President Trump was in office, both heads were useless. After Biden took power, the Chinese Communist Party started using its panda head. For example, Chinese ambassador to the United States, Cui Tiankai, had been calling to the United States for 2 consecutive days on January 26th and the 27th. He is threatening that the cooperation is the only option between the United States and China, while the Vice Foreign Minister Li Yongshang proposed 4 English words starting with R on January 28th. The 4 words are respect, reversal, renewal, and responsibility. They are hoping that Biden would reverse former President Trump's policies and cooperate with the Chinese Communist Party. On January 29th, Chinese Vice Chairman attended the 12th round of dialogues between U.S. and Chinese business leaders. In a video, he mentioned that the U.S. and China have more cooperation than conflict and more common interests than differences. The Chinese Communist Party has frequently revealed its wolf head during the former President Trump's era. Once Biden arrived, the CCP immediately turned into a panda. However, the panda is ready to turn into a wolf and bite at any time. In fact, it seems that the Chinese Communist Party is using both a soft and hard approach with Biden. One might think they are testing the bottom line of the Biden administration. In late January, the Chinese Communist Party conducted a record number of military aircraft incursions into Taiwan. Forbes magazine analyzed the incursions as a sign the Communist Party was preparing to invade Taiwan. But Bernard Cole, a professor at the National War College, has a different view. He believes that the CCP has a strategy to sneak into Taiwan. He believes that after the first wave of rocket and commando attacks, the CCP may use soldiers disguised as civilian passengers or hidden in container ships to enter Taiwan, then launch an attack inside the island. As early as 2008, Taiwan's military intelligence agency discovered that the Chinese Communist Party had plans to quietly send military personnel into northern Taiwan. A U.S. think tank scholar previously warned that the Chinese Communist Party might secretly use civilian vessels to disguise themselves ashore. Then the communist forces would raid Taiwan under the guise of military exercises. Those disguised as land communist troops would then help to fight in the raid. This is the analysis of some experts and scholars of the strategy of the Chinese Communist Party's sneak attack on Taiwan. During the former President Trump administration, the U.S. military was under great pressure to safeguard Taiwan. It would have been more difficult for the Chinese Communist Party to attack Taiwan anyway. But now things have changed and become more unpredictable. Former President Trump's vice president, Mike Pence, has been labeled as a traitor by many Trump supporters for not standing up for him on January 6. They believe that Pence could at least let the states that submitted 2 results vote again on which one to submit. He could also endorse a 10-day review of the general election proposed by Republican congressmen. On January 31st, NBC reported new information about Pence, but since NBC is part of the mainstream media, it is not clear if it was another catch-all report. The report said that Pence is planning to set up a political fundraising committee of his own, and this committee is independent of Trump. The committee will focus on policy issues and will be beneficial for Pence to stay in touch with political contributors. Therefore, some analysts believe that Pence will not withdraw from the political arena, but rather he may be planning for his next political career. This may happen in the 2024 election. This is what NBC has reported. Former President Donald Trump was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize on Monday morning by Estonian member of the European Parliament, Jaak Madison. In a post on social media, Madison said, "In the last 30 years, Donald Trump is the first president of the United States who during his tenure has not started a war. Additionally, he signed several peace agreements in the Middle East, which has helped provide stability in the region and peace." Madison was referring to the Abraham Accords, a joint statement between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States, and later with Bahrain and other Arab countries. We encourage efforts to promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue to advance a culture of peace among the three Abrahamic religions in all humanity. According to a statement on the State Department's website, we believe that the best way to address challenges is through cooperation and dialogue, and that the developing friendly relations among states advances the interest of the lasting peace in the Middle East and around the world. Trump was also nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize last year by a Norwegian parliament member who said this about the former president. "For his merit, I think he has done more trying to create peace between nations than most other Peace Prize nominees." Separately, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz nominated Trump's son-in-law and former president advisor Jared Kushner on Monday morning. Dershowitz, who is eligible to nominate individuals because of his status as former Harvard Law professor, argued that Kushner and his associate, Avi Berkowitz, helped negotiate the Abraham Accords. These accords, which have brought about normalization between Israel and several Sunni Arab nations, fulfill all the criteria for the prize. Dershowitz wrote in his nomination letter. He also went on to say, "They hold the promise of even broader peace in the Middle East between Israel and Palestinians and other Arab nations. They are a giant step forward in bringing peace and stability to the region and even to the world." But the most important point Dershowitz made was the Nobel Peace Prize is not for popularity, nor is it an assessment of what the international community may think of those who help bring about peace. It is an award for fulfilling the daunting criteria set out by Alfred Nobel in his will, and I believe it's worthwhile to share the criteria with you. According to Nobel's will, the Peace Prize shall be awarded to the person who in the preceding year shall have done the most or the best work for fraternity between nations, for the abolition or reduction of standing armies, and for the holding and promotion of peace congresses. These agreements build as the Abraham Accords after the biblical patriarch revered by Muslims and Jews were a major foreign policy achievement by the Trump administration. Joe Biden has welcomed the agreements even as he has vowed to pursue different policies in the region, including bringing the United States back into the Iranian nuclear deal. Israel's military chief has warned that the country is working on possible options for a strike on Iran if required, as it urges President Joe Biden against rejoining the multinational 2015 nuclear deal with Tehran, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany. If you want to order products from MyPillow these days, you probably will receive an email like this telling you there could be a 2-week delay in shipping the order due to overwhelming demand. The CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell, has been a big supporter of President Trump since 2016. During the 2020 presidential election, he had spoken at President Trump's rally, live-streamed Trump's speech, and openly challenged the election results. For these reasons, Mike Lindell and his business, including business overseas, are under attack by the mainstream media. Lindell's Twitter account was banned from the social media platform since January 26. The domestic merchandise chain Bed Bath & Beyond also stopped selling products of MyPillow. On the Cat's Roundtable Sunday morning radio show 2 weeks ago, when asked, "Did you have any regrets for supporting Trump?" Lindell replied, "Absolutely none. I don't have any regrets, not one. Trump is the best president we've ever had. He kept his promises. He did so much for this country and so much for people in business, and I have no regrets. I would do it all again, only I would do it double." Don't worry, MyPillow is doing just fine because it has gotten overwhelming support from truth-loving American people. America needs more people like Mike Lindell, who's not intimidated to tell the truth despite the cancel culture environment we are living in today. And of course, we all need good sleep. Well, that's it for today, my friends. Please like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. And I'll see you next time.